Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I see many people are joining us today for this online workshop. Today's online workshop is a very important and very relevant topic for research and innovation. It's about implementing the F3 and how to better implement a smart specialization strategy, especially in this new programming period and in light of all the big societal challenges that we are facing right now. Not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but also now we have the war in Ukraine and so on. So many societal challenges to come on. So welcome from my side. I'm Arnault Morisson, one of the thematic experts in research and innovation. Very happy to be with you today for 2 hours and 30 minutes. And we also have Marc with us. How are you, Marc?
I'm good, Arnaud. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here. And as we know, designing S3 is fun, but implementing is even more fun. So looking forward to hearing from everybody on how we can improve our implementation skills.
Indeed, and we have also with us Eugénie from the communication team. How are you, Eugénie? And Thorsten as well. So good to have all the PLP team around the table. So before we move on to our great speakers, good practices and thematic working groups, maybe Thorsten, you can tell us a little bit more about what is Interreg Europe, I'm sure everybody knows, and the policy learning platform and how we can help.
Yes, thank you, Arnaud. Welcome, everybody. I think indeed, Arnaud, we can keep this presentation very brief because we have experienced Interreg Europe project partners with us. But just to set the framework, dear participants, also from my side, warm welcome. Thanks for joining. Just quick reminder about Interreg Europe. You know well, Interreg Europe supports European-wide cooperation between local and regional authorities. The idea to learn from each other, not to reinvent the wheel, to jointly develop policy solutions. Indeed, the main focus of the program is on local and regional development policies. As you also know well, we are in the middle of the transition between two programming periods from 2014-2020 to the new period 2021-2027. Interreg Europe, the program is also in the process of preparing the first call, which will be launched on 5th of April. But before talking about the future, let us look at the stock of knowledge, the stock of practical experiences we have gained over the last 7 years. Indeed, over the last 7 years, the project has invested more than 300 million euros in interregional cooperation, more than 2,000 organizations involved. And beyond project funding, I think this is the interesting element for those who work with Interreg. Interreg is well known for funding for cross-border, transnational, interregional cooperation. But with the policy learning platform, I would say the program has taken the courageous decision to go beyond funding. The idea is capitalization. What does capitalization mean? Basically, to make all the knowledge you have, the projects have, available to any policymaker across Europe. Furthermore, we know very often we have critical mass of projects working on similar or complementary topics, such as smart specialization. And of course, we as a program, we do not want the projects to work in silos, but also to create synergies and to use complementarities. How are we doing that? Next slide, indeed. Let us move forward with our team of experts, and Marc and Arnaud, our experts for research and innovation. They will guide you through the session. They look at the results, the good practices delivered by the projects. They draft targeted publications such as policy briefs, inter alia, on smart specialization. Of course, we organize events, and the last 18 months, well, nearly 24 months, have actually forced us also to think about innovative online formats, such as today's e-workshop. We have more than 2,000 good practices. Actually, we are reaching up to 2,500. We have more than 18,000 members in the community. Hence, we say a very rich and knowledgeable community on which we can build. Beyond this capitalization mission, we go to the third slide. We also provide services. We say ad hoc services or easily accessible services for interregional learning. And not everybody has the possibility to participate in an interregional project lasting for 3 or 4 years, or before getting engaged in projects. Maybe you want to test interregional cooperation. And with matchmaking sessions and peer reviews, we offer this possibility. How do peer reviews work? You put your questions, your challenges on the table, short, I promise, only 2 pages application form. You submit, you can always submit, we have no deadlines. And if the request is relevant, we start working with you, with our experts, with Marc and Arnault. We look for peers from the community and beyond who are well suited to discuss your questions, your challenges, and then we team up either in your region or online to dive deep into the challenges you are facing. As we all know, governance of innovation processes, we have addressed in Sweden, how to not only to engage stakeholders, how to keep them on board, and how to ensure the sustainability of large-scale investments in innovation. The link between research and the business community, I know this is one of your favorite topics, I know, and we know the Bulgarian government with structural funds, with the smart growth programs, they are investing heavily in the establishment of centers of competence, centers of excellence. The idea not to reinvent the wheel, but to learn from others who have already gained experience. We teamed up twice on site in 2019 in Sofia and follow up peer review. They came back to us with second request a couple of months ago. But also sectoral approaches, smart ports going beyond the classical port function we addressed or we supported the region of Hauts-de-France. This, dear participant, just as an appetizer to get engaged in the policy learning platform. Of course, all of us, Marc, Arnault, Eugenie, we are at your disposal. And with these words, I think, Arnault, we turn from theory into practice and dive deeper.
That's great. Thank you very much, Thorsten. Let me add also that we had very nice peer reviews with the Région Sud, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, on the topic of S3 and how to add a new sector with artificial intelligence in health in their S3. And we also had a very nice peer review with Vestland County in Norway, looking at the entrepreneurial discovery process in Norway when 2 regions were merging and putting stakeholders together. So plenty of good topics, and I'm sure we will have plenty of more topics and peer reviews related to implementing smart specialization strategy. So let's look at the agenda very, very quickly. So we have 2 great keynote speakers. So I'm very happy to welcome Fernando and Elisabetta with us. They are going to reflect on the implementation of smart specialization strategy in the past programming period, but also looking forward into the new one with specific insight, and also looking at the concept of S4+, so adding sustainability inclusiveness into the smart specialization strategy. We then are going to have a look at good practices from the community, 2 very nice good practices, one from Portugal and one from the Basque country. In Spain, Alexandre and Leire, so 2 good practices to look forward to. And also it's great because we have a discussant today, Annamaria Fiora from Puglia regions in Italy, reflecting on the good practices and the keynote speech. Then we are moving into the thematic working groups. So it's a time to exchange and to learn from each other. So be ready to prepare 1 slide from your regions that you would like to share with other participants regarding how you are implementing the smart specialization strategy in your region right now, and what were the main challenges you faced when implementing S3 in the past programming period. And then for the people who register to our policy help desk, we are going to be here with Marc to support you and to help you. But maybe, Eugenie, you can tell us about Zoom, technical details very shortly, and what's happening during the breaks.
Sure, thank you, Arnaud. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eugénie, and I'm helping Arnaud this afternoon for the workshop. So before we start the second panel on the implementing S3 good practices, we will have a 10-minute networking break. So the way it will be is that I will randomly assign you to a breakout room, and you have the option to go to this breakout room and to meet other participants and discuss S3 strategies, or you can also stay in the main session should you want to go grab coffees. Also note that it will be the same for the third panel discussion on the working groups. You will be assigned to breakout rooms, and you don't have to do anything else. You just have to accept the invitation that you will receive on Zoom. Regarding the rules on Zoom, I think that you all know these rules by now. When you're not speaking, please turn off your microphone. You can also, we invite you to have your camera on so that we can all see each other. And yes, you can see on the slides the questions that you can ask to one another during the networking break. So that is it from my side. Have a nice workshop.
Thank you very much, Eugénie. And indeed, some of the questions you can ask during the networking breaks, you can ask where you're from, of course. That's always a good question. Are you part of an Interreg project? And tell me about your regional S3. So good questions for you.
Just interrupt, use the chat as well. I mean, Arnaud and I will be online listening to everything that's being said, but if you've got urgent, interesting questions, use the chat and we'll respond. Hopefully.
Yes, indeed. We try to make the workshop as interactive as possible, as a real workshop, on-site workshop. So please use the chat, raise your hand, ask questions, be very informal in doing so. Just a few things that we've done with Marc. We've written like a very nice policy brief, and I think Elisabetta wrote also a foreword. So please have a look at our policy brief on smart specialization strategy, very relevant, a lot of good practices, and a lot of policy recommendations as well. So very interesting. Wrote a nice story on the entrepreneur discovery process and what's happening, how to do it in COVID-19 crisis. And we had, I think, one of your colleagues, Annamaria from Puglia, wrote like a very nice recommendation here and shared their experience. And we already discussed that. We had a peer review on sector prioritization and the entrepreneur discovery process in Westland County. So you can read the follow-up report here if you're interested. I propose that we move on. First, Fernando, then Elisabetta. The floor is yours, Fernando, to share your presentation. And you have 10 minutes and time for questions. So please use the chat, participants. Fernando, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Arnaud, and thanks the platform for inviting the GRC to this interesting event. It's a pleasure for me to be here today and talk to you on the challenges that the RIS3 process has poses to regions and member states during this the previous period in designing and implementing and monitoring the smart specialization strategy. It's always very relevant and interesting to think on the process and how it has been evolving during the years. But probably today I'm going to take the more boring part as talking about the past, and Elisabetta is going to have the nice part of talking about what is going to happen in the future. But I think that it's very interesting to reflect on what happened, although most of you has been involved in these policies for a long time, and you know as better as me what has happened. But a reflection on the things that happen and what are the results of those things, I think that this is quite interesting because we understanding what has happened, we are going to be much better in order to much better position it in order to proceed in the next programming period, and to identify what to keep, what to change, and why we should change or keep a policy. So I've been involved in the smart specialization process in 2011. So a long story on my side, starting first as a national, working in a national administration, and then in at the GRC. So I have views from different parts, but any of my thoughts probably are not going to surprise you, or there is no hidden thing that is going to thrill you in my talk. In any case, I want to share my thoughts and the evidence that I have been experimenting during these years. No? The first thing I remember when starting working with the RISC-3 concept, it was that it was not clear to understand what was behind this appealing concept of smart specialization. I remember perfectly having problems to see what was the difference between the RISC-3 acronym and the RIS acronym, the Regional Innovation System acronym. So it was at the very beginning a confusion between these things, a confusion that were growing with the past of the time when we tried to understand in which ways these elements that were new has to be organized internally. So the big challenges started very soon in the design phase, when challenges for identifying the priorities, how they will be selected, how to choose only a few areas and leave others aside, how to advance in beyond sectoral policies, and how to organize all of these things around the EDP. That was, again, a very strange acronym that it was difficult to translate into different languages and to understand what was behind the concept. And also, when we understood the acronym, it was also very difficult to understand and to put in place the methodology of getting to that. And then all of these things has to be governed, and the governance of the system was even more difficult than the other things that we have experienced during these years. And then if we wanted to monitor the development of all of these elements, another problems will appear because of the novelty of the process. So it was not only a question of putting in place a new model, a new system, but it was putting in place a new system according to the cohesion policy rules and the structural funds rules that are probably not the most innovative environments to develop innovation policies. So at the very beginning, even before the starting point, the difficulties and the challenges were huge. I think that probably the most important challenge that the regions and the members states face at the very beginning and during the implementation has to be related with the skills. We having the right skills, skilled personnel, we have the right resources in our teams for designing and implementing this complex environment. You need really strong teams, really well-positioned teams for understanding the difficulties. And in my view, all the community that were around this process, the European Commission, the member states, the regions, even the experts that proposed the concept were exploring some very unknown and difficult grounds. And I think that now we can fully appreciate what was the meaning of the learning by doing mantra that we were using we were used to hear when designing the RISC-3 model. It's well, a very challenging and risky proposal, the one that we have to design. Of course, now we can see that after the years, we have identified that RISC-3 managing teams had needed more expertise and abilities back then to properly design, engage, implement, and govern the smart specialization process or model. These complexities of this innovation policy require specific capabilities that were not so common back then, and they are not so common today because of the complexity of the model. And of course, I think that the challenges that we have faced has been evolving during the time, and then there is not the same situation today that it was 10 years ago or 12 or 8 years ago. And I think that it's good to go to analyze specific elements, specific challenges, to see how this evolution had happened and what has been the results of them. For instance, in terms of governance, the challenges has been huge. Probably these elements regarding the governance has been the more challenges related with the capacities and the skills that I mentioned before. The complexities has affected many basic elements of the system, and we have not able to get sufficient or effective horizontal and vertical coordination. We have not been able to create enough capacity building in terms of governance or institutional arrangements. But at the same time, it is true that many things has been put in place when facing this challenge, and some dynamics have clearly improved. For instance, the relationships between and among private and public actors have improved the decision-making process itself, and have facilitated the creation of new ways of mobilization and participation in policy formulation. About the EDP that I mentioned before, the challenges affected the challenges affected differently in the territories. There were territories that were much more capable of understanding the needs. Even there were countries or regions that in a way they were doing this kind of EDP thing because they have some tradition. But in the cases that this was not the case, the difficulties in engaging and involving people has been very, very difficult. And even we show at the very beginning of the process that the involvement was there, and the administration were able to attract different elements to the discussions, but then it was quite difficult to maintain this involvement along the process. And the continuous EDP that we were talking about 5 years ago has not been proved sufficient built. However, I think that even in the worst case scenario, we can see that this challenge has pushed the territories to create new instruments and behaviors during the implementation of these strategies. For example, in terms of communication with and between the agents, and in the definition or the design of new dissemination tools, or creation of new digital ways of participation. So a lot of things have came after. In terms of the prioritization, the risk-free concept challenged the traditional non-specific research and innovation spending and forced regions to identify concrete priorities to invest in. The challenge was also related with the creation of new instruments for improving the efficiency of these investments. And of course, facing the challenge was not, let's say, an easy process. And it resulted in a weak strategic prioritization with little selectivity, both in terms of priorities and type of interventions. However, again, in my view, the prioritization process has positively evolved during the implementation phase, and I will mention that also at the end of my talk. And regarding the new instruments, well, the challenge was really complex, and we cannot say that a lot of new instruments has been created. Most of the instruments that has been used were traditional instruments that at the most has been improved a bit. But again, some new things has appeared regarding, for instance, with innovative procurement. New elements has been created there. In terms of monitoring and evaluation, well, it was another very stressful element when designing the strategies and when implementing these strategies. It was very difficult to control the effectiveness of the innovation priorities or the changes in the governance model or the implementation itself of the EDP, having no specific elements, having no specific indicators for the risk-free process. And I think that this inability to create good, strong and solid monitoring system is one of the elements that have prevented the risk-free to go beyond to go a little bit beyond. And another element that I would like to mention before finishing is the challenge of interregional cooperation. You remember that the risk-free has to have this component, this outward-looking component, in order to push and favor the collaboration or the cooperation between the European regions. And I think that there was very much critics. There was a lot of criticism on the fact that the strategies were too much local based conceived rather than thinking global. However, I think that the challenge of interregional cooperation have been significantly overcome, and the territories have shown a great deal of interest in finding ways for developing initiatives based on common RIS3 specific priorities. When in 2016, the European Commission launched the first S3 thematic platform on energy, not many people could expect the huge number of regions that are now members of interregional partnerships. Today, more than 200 regions or member states have shared their interest in finding new avenues for collaboration with others in putting in place new projects, creating new products, or working together in the value chains. So I think that, of course, there are remaining challenges in interregional cooperation. There are many. I will mention two. One is that most of the regions participating in these partnerships are from the more developed regions in Europe, and there are a lot of capabilities that are not exploited significantly in EU 13 members. So there is a need to try to overcome the fragmentation of the innovation ecosystems in Europe. But I think that it's quite good, the ambience, the environment that we have now after this year working in the interregional component. And as a conclusion, I think that, of course, RIS3 was and is a very complex model based on several risky approaches. And when it was launched assuming that the territories will face difficult challenges. These challenges have conditioned in several ways the development of the results of these strategies. But on the other hand, these challenges have reinforced the administrative capacities, have improved the understanding of the relevance of innovation policies that are now in the front line of any transforming effort that the regions are defining. So I think that with this, I finish my presentation and enjoy Elisabetta's, that is going to be more fun than mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Really good reflections on the past programming period and the main challenges. But now I'm a little bit scared because I can see Elisabetta's background and it looks scary. What's happening, Elisabetta? Are you going to tell us like bad news or something?
Well, one sec. First, I'm gonna try and look for my. Okay. No, basically, I was jealous of Fernando's background, so I thought even
okay.
bigger.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
We compete on Zoom backgrounds. Okay. Where is my PowerPoint? Okay, here it is. Yay. Okay, can you guys
good
see?
Yeah, we can see full screen mode.
Okay.
Yes, now it's good. And you have 10 minutes as well.
Okay, thanks. So good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm not sure my presentation will be more interesting, but thank you, Fernando and Arnault, for your introduction. So I was asked to talk about what addressing grand challenges meant for smart specialization. And I thought it was great because we have recently launched a MOOC which actually addresses these things. It addresses them, specifically for the med areas, but the concepts apply to the whole of Europe, to the whole of smart specialization regions. So I'm gonna share with you some concepts that we introduced in the MOOC, and particularly in the last module of the MOOC. And I'm also gonna leave you with the link to the MOOC, which is free, and it was developed together with the Generalitat de Catalunya under the Panoramed governance platform. So what does it mean? What do grand challenges mean? Okay, well, it means, if we want to be the most generic, it means sustainable development goals. The sustainable development goals collect 17 objectives for 2030, which are all related to grand challenges. And the same is for the European Green Deal. So both of these documents represent, in a way, the transitions we want to move forward too. Okay, so when we talk in terms of grand challenges, what we mean is what policies can help us meet the ambitious agenda set up by these documents. Now, going back to S3, we know about localization, prioritization, participation, and we also know that a couple of years ago, the issue of sustainability, the fourth S, was added. So we started talking about S4. Now, I need to stress that S4 is not a formal name. There isn't any official publication of the European Commission that talks about S4. So it's, you know, right now we're going to just use it as a device to understand that we are going beyond the original S3, and we're adding this element of transformation, and we are going to reflect on what it means for smart specialization strategies to be sustainable or even broader, to aim at addressing societal challenges. How does it affect the key elements of smart specialization? So before going into the specifics of S3 and how they change in this new context, I want to introduce you to conceptual tools. One of them is the two loops model, and because we think, I mean the developers of the MOOC, we think that they're useful devices to think in terms of policy. So we can imagine ourselves in a moment of change. You know, the old paradigm is declining, and the new paradigm is emerging, and we still don't know what the new paradigm will look like, and we still don't know how exactly the old paradigm will decline. We just know that this is happening. We do know that there will be, hopefully, unless we fail, a more sustainable organization of society, but we don't exactly understand what this will look like. Okay, in this context, the role of the policymakers is double. On the one hand, you need to ensure that the new paradigm emerges. And how does that happen? Well, first you have to name it, you know, sustainability. We cannot keep polluting the planet and affecting the climate, because the consequences, we don't know exactly what they will be like at our footstep, but there will be ones. It might be extreme rain, it might be fires, it might be something else. They will be there. We don't know yet, but we need to deal with this uncertainty. Then we need to connect the people who are addressing them in very separate ways, and some of them may not be doing anything that's useful yet, and we don't know, but we need to make sure that whoever is engaged in these processes actually is aware of whoever else has also an interest, whoever else is also addressing that challenge. And then we need to nurture these networks, okay? And because by nurturing them, some solutions will be experimented, and then they hopefully can be scaled up and generate new social dynamics, new economic dynamics that can actually lead us to the future that we hope to live in. At the same time, we cannot just forget what was going on, and because the former model, no matter how much we think is, damaging the environment, if we talk about sustainability, is also the model that has sustained our livelihood. And a lot of people are invested, and they invested their whole life into that type of model. And also that old model contains a lot of skills that actually can, a lot of resources that actually can be useful in the new model. It's just not clear how so. So the policymakers has also the responsibility to facilitate the transition of those that are most invested in the old model, so that they can be useful, they can be engaged in the new model. Okay, this is obviously in these two processes there is a lot of frictions, there are a lot of conflicts, there are a lot of people who are going to be disappointed, but I think it's useful for the policymakers to think of, helping the decline of the old model at the same time as illuminating the new future. Another tool that we find interesting, another tool that we find interesting is that of the multi-level perspective, which is very often used in the context of sustainability again, but I hope that you see that the points I'm making can be extended also to other types of societal challenges like healthy aging or, the energy market and so on. Okay, so in this context, it is useful to interpret reality across these different level. There is the global context in which individually no one can affect, okay? And this global context puts pressure on the system, and the system is what we know, what has been working, institutions, business models. That's, you know, that's the reality that we know, and that is the reality that needs to evolve, okay? But the system doesn't evolve when you ask him to evolve. Sorry, system, can you change? Can you become more sustainable? The system self-reproduces itself, okay? But it's not impermeable to the rest, to the other two dimensions. It feels the pressure from the global context, and it also feels the pressure from below, okay? It's not that the system is bad. The system actually tries to make us all live and mediate between the different elements of society, but the system is not geared automatically by change. By itself, it's difficult for the system to evolve. It has some inertia, let's say. Now, so historically, what has been proven to happen is that when there are significant changes, for instance, the mobility system changed dramatically in the 20th century. There were no cars, and suddenly, well, in the space of a few decades, most families in many European countries would have 2 cars. Okay, that didn't take much. So that was a significant change in the system. Whether good or bad, I'm not getting into there, but it changed. Okay, so what happened? How has historically been proven to evolve? Well, typically there are emerging innovations that are not yet part of the system, that they show that they're unconnected, and actually at some point when they're supported, they get scale, and ultimately they affect the system. They penetrate it and then generate new dynamics. Okay, when we look at smart specialization, what does this picture tell us? That we have global challenges that will affect and will manifest locally in different ways, and that are also asking the system to change. And now, on the other hand, we have the entrepreneurial discovery process that is now can be read in the following terms. It is that process that need to be aware and to engage all the actors that are being dynamic, that are these blue arrows that you can see, and needs to deal with them so that the best ideas actually can scale up, and they can be nurtured so that the best idea can scale up and have an opportunity to change the system. Okay, so very good. So how does that translate in terms of smart specialization oriented to transformative change? Well, priorities are should no longer be based or be defined in terms of competitiveness, but it's useful to think of them in terms of the challenge they address. And just to give an example, innovation to support competitiveness in health and community medicine would be an old style S3, whereas innovation in the area of dependence and chronic disease of aging population, developing new processes and technology to generate products and services that better respond to real needs, well, it's a definition that is more aligned to an S3 oriented to systemic change. I want to stress that there is a lot of the activities in the old S3 are very similar to the new one. At the end, we're still talking about medicine, but the way you think about it is not like, oh, I want to be competitiveness, I want to be more competitive, I want to innovate because I want to sell more. You start from the challenge, and because you start from the challenge, a lot of things become possible. And let me go through that. The analysis. S3 always placed a lot of attention to a good mapping of the territory. Okay, here we need to go a step further, and we need to think of systemic analysis. We need to understand. We need to go beyond our territory, and also we need to understand how what we are trying to achieve, the challenge we're trying to address, we need to place it in a multi-level perspective. So we need to be able to see ourselves as a region or as a priority in a global background, in a systemic background, and in a territorial background. Okay, so the different dimensions of a system. Now, the entrepreneurial discovery process used to be oriented to identifying priorities and then refine them and reviewing them. And here we just suggest to go a step further and to think about co-creation of solutions to challenges. So we're moving to instruments, and the instruments need to kind of embed the it's kind of moving the idea of continuous entrepreneurial discovery process one step further and engaging stakeholders, not only in the definition and in the monitoring and in the discussion about priority, but also in the discussion of the solutions to their challenges. No? This is done through different types of instruments that actually fund collaboration through time and require a broader network of collaborations. Monitoring used to be strongly linked to progress assessment and policy learning. Now, this is still going, this is still very, very important, but we want to think also about systemic learning. What does it mean? That actually, if there is a large pool of stakeholders that are interested in one challenge, I think it's useful for them to have an overview of what's happening in relation to the challenge. So here we're thinking about, you know, even data platforms that are open, that are accessible, so that anyone that actually wants to, you know, works in aging populations or, you know, sustainability, circular economy, well, can have a picture of who's involved and what's happening in the territory, and ideally beyond, but let's start from the territory. Governance. Okay, here we used to talk about governance in terms of involving stakeholders in the policy design and implementation, and devise mechanisms that would be able to have their feedback received from the policymaker. Here, we just again want to stress the idea of engaging not stakeholders just because they're in the same territory, but actually because they share a common challenge. So devise mechanisms that allow stakeholders that actually are working in a similar to a similar area to give them a platform so that they keep talking about it, keep working on it together and provide feedback within the governance system. So I think I've gone beyond my 10 minutes, but luckily this is my last slide. Oops. And so I thank you for your attention. I'm available for your questions.
Thank you, Elisabetta. And indeed, it was an optimistic presentation, not like the background. So thanks for that. To have some insights for this new programming period. We open now the floor to questions. We don't have so much time for questions, but we can, of course, take more time for it. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. You can also use the chat. I think Marc always have questions, but I also have a questions for you because this is super interesting. And my question is related to the idea of missions. So we see that some regions, they start thinking about not like technological priorities, but rather like missions. So, you know, how does it differ to use missions compared to priorities, sectorial priorities for the implementation of the S3? And how many missions can a regions target? Because you see at the European level, there are only 5 missions. And I was one of, you know, experts evaluating one S3 and they were having 10 missions. So how many missions is good? And how does it differ from regular technological priorities?
Okay, Fernando, you want to go or should I go?
After you.
Okay.
You first.
Right. I think missions are, I understand why they're relevant at the EU level when you're pursuing technological and scientific excellence. And I think they are a useful, let's say, beam light to be, I mean, they identify the big challenges, okay? It's another way. Now, when it comes to smart specialization, I think an effort needs to be made to actually translate those missions. Okay, so let's start from those if you want, you know, like if they make sense to your region, because you know, not okay, I'll say that later, but then you still have to make an effort to translate them in terms of territorial challenges, okay? Because for instance, if we talk about climate change and you know, the effects of climate change and the effects on the economy of a territory will be very different in an island as compared to a mountainous area, okay? The economy of these places is likely to be different and they're likely to need different solutions. And so you need to articulate it better, okay? Now, you know, now I don't remember the list of missions, but one of the very important missions was the cure to cancer. I don't think that can be an S3 priority for many regions unless they have a very strong research system on that topic. And if they do, you know, unfortunately, that is a huge challenge, and they still have to define it better according to their own capacities, because, you know, like you're talking about, you know, a very diversified set of elements in that mission. So I think if you take them as like that, then it's a top-down thing. If you take them as like these are huge challenges, and at the EU level, at national level, you know, a lot of funding and a lot of reflection is going in that direction. What does that mean for your territory? And then make an effort to translate and articulate those in territorial terms, economically, in terms of economic implication and impact, scientific and innovation, and so on. I don't know if that was clear, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, if I may, I think that, well, I think that we are talking some of the points that Elisabetta has mentioned about the narrative. You know, I think that we are evolving. The narrative is evolving in a way when you think what were the societal challenges that the former H2020 program has. We were not so far from the mission. I think that it has been a more concretization, if this word exists in English, I don't know. More focus in specific areas that are really more, they are wider, and at the same time are integrating different elements that probably were dispersed. You know, this is my view of the European missions, let's say. But of course, we are talking about a proposal that the Commission made for the whole community of Europe and beyond. So when you are talking about your particular case in a particular region, as Elisabetta said, you have to be very cautious. You have to find what are the real competencies, the real needs, the real effects that, for instance, these societal challenges or these missions are going to be close related with you. And I think that the problem that we are facing now is that if when the prioritization process in the RIS3, in the former RIS3, was considered complex, I think that we are getting to a even more complex scenario when trying to go from the technological side, because we started to defining sectoral policies. We then move forward from sectoral to more comprehensive policies, and now we are going to a systemic view of all the things together. So the complexities could be even bigger, That's why I think that the interaction between the different ages need to be improved much more than the situation that we have now, in order to be able to identify what could be your role in a mission or within a mission. But I would not suggest to go so wide in defining the priorities of a territory.
Thanks, Fernando, Elisabetta. Marc, you always have some good questions.
Well, this time, Arnault, I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to answer your question, because it was a good question. I think we've got to put the right strategy in the right place, and I think Fernando, I think, summed it up well. You know, there's some things the S3 strategies can do and some things they can't do, and I think in many regions you've got and it was highlighted by Fernando as well, the governance issues. We've got, you know, take the example of France, we have economic strategies that sit above all the other strategies in the region. They're called the mother of all strategies. And it's in that document that you find the mission statements, the mission, the vision for the territory. And then there's a tourism sub-strategy. There's a mountain region, ski resort. There are many different things that then have to respond to those broader mission statements. And the S3 is one of those strategies that feeds in. It's sometimes in the hierarchy of things, not at the top, and therefore has a role to contribute, but not actually be the answer or provide the answer to all of the mission challenges that a region may have, because they will not have the critical mass or would not have the relevance. So I think it's finding the right place for the S3 and its process. And that was where Elisabetta gave us the sort of insights how these are evolving to take on board wider perspectives. But I think to be credible, it has to stay where it has the real value added, and not trying to solve the missions or the societal challenges that have come through either Horizon Europe or now in some of the other broader missions the European Community is delivering through digital transition, green transition, etc.
All right, thank you very much, Marc. I saw in the chat that maybe Richard Tuff has a question for you. Not sure, do you want to ask it now, or maybe we can put you in the break with Elisabetta and Fernando? Richard, are you here?
Yes, Arnault. No, I can ask if you've got time, I can ask the question. If not, I can take in the break.
Okay, if it's we need to make it super quick, and then we move on to breaks. Is that good for you, Richard?
A quick question.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, my question was on what you've raised, Elisabetta, and is on this role of what we call ESG, environment, social, and governance, and it's more the importance of sustainable finance. And I was wondering, is this going to be part of this move to S4? Because it's a wider debate. For example, the recovery plans, the national recovery plans, you cannot spend money. You have to invest in what they call do no significant harm projects. So I was wondering how far you saw this new thinking around due diligence, sustainable finance as part of S4.
Okay, thanks, Richard, for this question. I have not articulated, I had not had the opportunity to think about this specific question until now. I think, however, in line with what also Marc was saying and also Fernando was saying, no, like I think it's, if you want, it's part of that systemic analysis that needs to be done. So for an S3. Formally S3, but an S3 that inside wants to be an S4 to be credible. I would expect regional policymakers to have thought about these issues. Okay, so it's not like it's not formally a requirement to please prove that you have thought about it, but like I think it's a reflection that that needs to happen, because it's part of the it's part of the leverage of the instruments you have, if they're coherent with all sorts of other policy tools that are available. So yeah, I would say for me, a credible policymakers would have to make an effort to understand where RIS3 instruments fit in the broader policy mix, whether the broader policy mix includes also tools that are not directly within the control of the regional government. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you, Elisabetta, but we don't have more time. Unfortunately, we need to move on to breaks, 10 minutes, and then we come back for the good practices. So 10 minutes break, everyone. You can either like stay here or network, your choice. And thank you, speakers. Thank you, thank you, Elisabetta and Fernando, for being here.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I see people are joining in. I can see Marc, you're back, you're here. How was your break, Marc?
Well, I was stopped in mid-flow. Apologies to Richard, Dimitri, and Inetta, but.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Good little chat.
Excellent, great to hear. So welcome back, everyone. Now we are in our session related to intra-Europe good practices. And we are very lucky because we have a lot of different intra-Europe good practices and projects to showcase. So our good practices and our speakers, they come from 4 different intra-Europe projects. There is S3 for growth, so looking at policies for interregional cooperation and value chains. There is also cohesion 3, so integrating the territorial dimension, cohesing S3, so looking at the sub-regional level. We also have improve. Improve, it's for improving structural funds for the better delivery of research, development, innovation policies. And we also have Passepartout which is interregional projects related to soft innovation policies and in the context of F3. So 3 very interesting presentation. First, we're gonna look at what's happening in Portugal, in Galicia with Alexandre. So the first one, you have 8 minutes and the floor is yours. And then we're gonna see what's happening in the Basque Country at the sub-regional level. And then we are going to have Annamaria from Puglia kind of reflecting from everything and the good practices and reflecting what's happening in Puglia regions. Alexandre, the floor is yours and you have 8 minutes.
Thank you, Arnault. First of all, let me thank you for the kind invitation to be here with you. It's a pleasure to see some of you, the others I can only see the names, but anyhow, it's a pleasure reading your name. I hope we can, our experience in Portugal can be of assistance and valuable to all of you, especially because as before was said, smart specialization, this first programming cycle, we were still learning about it. It was a very blurry concept. We needed to improve on how to do it, how to operationalize it, and then how to take it to the next level, which is use it in the sense of the implementation of public policy. Portugal actually presents a very interesting context because on one hand, it has a multi-level smart specialization, which means that combines a national layer that is transversal to the whole country, combined with regional layers that somehow cross the national priorities, which are pretty much aligned with European Union priorities, with the specificities of each territory. And so we have, hopefully, not so complicated symbiotic strategy that actually takes advantage of national matrix policies alongside with more directed and targeted regional policies. On the other hand, we thought that borders were not sufficient to stop us from cooperating more. Sometimes when you look at the exercises, you will see, and I'll share my screen, you'll see that the cooperation is beyond our national borders. And when you look at exercises like the one on the left corner, you'll see that the interconnections of players in North region and Galicia in different areas are actually quite strong. This is a network exercise that we have in terms of monitoring, and that somehow maps how agents interact. And you can see on the top right corner the map of North region, the upper part of Portugal and Galicia, and you can actually notice that in some areas, cooperation of North with Galicia is stronger than cooperation of North with Central region, for instance. So we started thinking that we should deepen the European integration also from a strategic standpoint and try to create a better coordination in terms of investment. So the opportunity laid here. First, RIS3 created a common framework, and we explored this common framework not only in this connection between North and Galicia, which is a good practice that we will speak about, but also we are trying to explore the southern part between Algarve and Alentejo and Andalusia, because we share similar problems, similar contexts, and the approach, the response should be global. But we also took this as a standpoint to build pillars across interregional projects, so later we can construct bridges, because we strongly believe that smart specialization provides us the landscape where we are more aware of which everybody is targeting, and so it's easier for us to matchmake in terms of our common interests. A second level for North and Galicia, which is a pioneering strategy in terms of cross-bordering, was the proximity, not only territorial, but cultural. There's a strong tradition of and strong proximity between North and Galicia and north of Spain, an economic proximity that is translated by that dense network of cooperation, and of course, the need for a transformation. Both North and Galicia are transforming from a more labor-intensive economy towards a more knowledge-intensive economy. And so the challenges and the structural fragilities that they face are quite similar. Furthermore, in order to get critical mass of certain areas and be able to compete proficiently, for instance, in Horizon Europe calls, we need to gather resources. And so the innovative milieu cannot be restricted to North, but should be bigger. And so Galicia provides a great partner for North. So when we were creating the entrepreneur discovery processes and discussing this even politically, we came up with 6 priorities. One are agro, food, and biotech. Of course, industry 4.0. Both North and Galicia still have lots of manufacturing industry. Health and active aging. North and Galicia, and especially Galicia, is one of the most aged regions in Europe. And so aging is a problem that we need to tackle together. And health is always a very sexy topic that provides great opportunities in terms of innovation. Creative industries and culture, because we are increasingly 2 touristical regions with strong historical backbone that we can explore together. Renewable energies and sea economy and mobility. But beyond talking to you about the priorities, I would prefer to talk to you about the challenges. And on the right, you see another exercise that we do at National Innovation Agency that is much more complex. It covers the other regions in Portugal as well to try to mix and match the links. If you want, later on, we can provide you a larger picture so this can be readable. But this also captures the main topics in terms of specialization between different regions to try to find the match. And we faced a couple of challenges. First, and beyond the ones that are already mentioned, but in terms of the concept not being matured enough, etc., tradition and culture. Although we have a strong culture of cooperating with Galicia and Portugal with Spain, this is not an in-depth cooperation. So it's a more borderline cooperation that tries to tackle common problems like managing the water in the rivers or managing assistance services in the villages next to the border. So they were not so in depth, and we wanted to go beyond that. A second challenge, and probably this is the one of the most important ones, is commitment. It's very hard to keep people committed, not only the society but also politically. And this means that sometimes between the exercise of building a strategy and its delivery in terms of public policy, it takes too long, and we are not so much committed and focused to actually deliver the best results. Finding common ground, which was to design those priorities. This is always a tricky exercise, but this is something that is quite manageable. If we do an honest and humble exercise, we know what we are, where we are, and who we are. And we can find out who we want to be and where we want to be. And so this is a challenge, but not so much. I would say that fighting against crystallization is a major challenge, because what we see is that it was very hard to keep the move going. We devise a strategy, write it out, we have a nice piece of paper, but then keep on fueling the strategy, keep on explaining people that this is a dynamic exercise that can change over time. It's not a matter of inconsistency. If we change it, if we adapt it, it's actually complicated because we tend to deliver a strategy, it's a document, and it's like the Bible, it cannot be touched. And this was something that we're facing, and we are trying to improve. Governance, of course, and this is something that I'll mention later on, but governance is the key to this all. Beyond priorities, if we cannot govern, we cannot apply the strategy in practice, and so we get into a sandbank, we cannot leave it. Breaking through inertia, it's very hard, as Merida was saying before, it's very hard to break through the inertia of institutions. Policy instruments and the programming cycle come first, strategy comes later. This is also something that the European Commission needs to deal with, because if you ask the managers, which are their key performance indicators, is about how fast they spend the money, not how good they spend the money. It's not about being very selective. It's about guaranteeing that you have a good pace for spending the money. This creates the wrong incentive schemes and leads to strong inertia to change any type of policy tool. And this is quite relevant. We live in a different context. The innovation system faces different challenges and needs different tools. And so we need to be able to innovate and change these tools. and above all, looking beyond. What we were facing, the challenge is that people are very biased toward their immediate needs. So I want to improve my technology, or I think there's a good market opportunity in fishing and aquaculture, and they are worried about the next 5 years. But smart specialization is about transformation. It's about a long-term structural change. And so we need to understand what we want to be, not tomorrow, not in 5 years, but in 15 years. And what we will be in 15 years starts today. And so making people look beyond is actually quite tricky, and keeping them stimulated to keep on looking beyond is actually quite difficult, especially when you have COVID and now the Ukrainian conflict. So starting with the good practices and where I feel we have a good practice. First, the initiative per se. Creating a cross-border smart specialization is already innovative in the sense that we are involved and committed to actually improve the way we cooperate across Europe, and especially in cross-border regions that share a lot of commonalities. And we have a strong belief that we all are facing common problems in different degrees, in different stances, with different standing points, but we are facing common challenges that need common answers. It's pointless to have a very rich region and a very poor region, because all regions are aging, all regions face security problems, all regions face climate change. And if my neighbor is polluting and I am not, that doesn't matter because I'll be polluted anyhow. So we need coordination in terms of strategy, in terms of policy tools, and in terms of implementation. And so I would say that per se, the strategy in itself is already relevant, but I would point out especially two good practices, one in terms of monitoring, the other in terms of governance. We tried to conceive a common monitoring system, a system that was based on the results of a European project, of an Interreg project, and that we transferred into the context of North and Galicia. And then using another European project, a cross-border Interreg, we got the means to implement two things. First, to operationalize this monitoring system that covers 4 main dimensions. One is about implementation. Are we doing what we are supposed to do, the steps from JRC? Are we being selective, etc.? The first level results, can we see an improvement in terms of linkages between universities and firms? Do we see more cooperation? We will see that there's an increase in cooperation between North and Galicia institutions in terms of addressing H2020 calls. There was an increase. Maybe RIS3, the cross-border, contributed a little bit for that. A structural change, which is what we envision with smart specialization, a complete rearrangement of the resources and the way we use those resources in terms of creating innovation and devising a new competitive vector for our regions, and long-term impacts that we cannot monitor right now. It will take a long. So this monitoring system, and this is one of the good practices, we created a basis for common indicators. We harmonized concepts in order for us to have an articulated monitoring system that we could work and could provide data from both sides of the border. Also creating a continuous, or starting to prepare a continuous feed of information to the stakeholders, because the accountability and reporting, we feel that it's very important for them to feel that their participation is meaningful. We are harassing people to participate in our workshops, and we need to give them some feedback later on. And so accountability, and especially this monitoring across border, is important to make this happen. And we're also creating an observatory, which is more dedicated to forecasting the future and monitoring transformation rather than simply reporting data. So the monitoring system covers two aspects. One, much more data related of everyday basis, what is happening in the past and the present, and an observatory that, although analyzes these results from the past and the present, forecasts the future and tries to instigate discussion within the regions. So the monitoring and the co-monitoring system is actually something that we took advantage of, and we believe it's a good practice. A second one is on governance. There is a long-term tradition between North and Galicia of cooperation, and for decades now, we have common work groups that somehow try to discuss which could be the projects for North and Galicia in terms of the cross-border Interreg program. We used this joint task force, we created a task force, and we used this community to also take stock on the smart specialization strategy that it was being devised, and to work on identifying which could be the anchor projects to make this happen and to make this more concrete. And based on this, a common investment plan was developed that somehow tries to coordinate what we are investing in Portugal, what Spain is investing in Galicia, and also which things we are investing together. And for instance, the Iberian Nanotechnologies Laboratory, which is actually a predecessor of smart specialization, so it's not an effect of smart specialization, but it was a good example of one laboratory that is in North that was co-funded by both countries. And we want to stimulate this cooperation and the ability of Portugal also investing in initiatives in Spain, and always try to gather resources together. So I would say that in terms of governance, the creation of a task force to try to drive smart specialization into practice, a common investment plan that actually makes it happen, is actually an example on how we can finally deliver results. And on the same aspect, it was clear for us that it's not only about cooperating for North and Galicia, it's also cooperating among ourselves to enter in a great number calls in H2020 and now in the Horizon Europe. So we tried not only to jointly develop capacity building projects, many supported by Interreg, for us to improve our institutions and improve our capacity to deliver assistance to our stakeholders, but we also created lots of brokerage events and matchmaking events in order to support the co-promotion of projects and the joint participation in H2020. You have a summary of the results down there of the up until June, I think, of 2020, of the amount of money that institutions and companies from North and Galicia got in terms of subvention from Europe 2020. You have 340 million euros of subventions, an average of 400K per institution. And this is on the left side, the distribution. So in terms of recommendations and trying to keep with the time that was given to me, I would say that the first one is commitment. It's very hard to keep people committed, and ourselves. But strategies that want to transform are not emergency strategies. They need consistency, time consistency, and also policy consistency. This does not mean rigidity. As I mentioned before, strategy needs to evolve along time. It needs to be dynamic, but we need to be consistent. And when we develop a strategy, we need to be consequent with that strategy in terms of applying public policy. We need to be aware that we tend to be looking for the quick wins, and the quick wins are very interesting and they are very visible for people and they can be instrumental, but we should be targeting transformation. And this is something that we should have always in the back of our head when creating a strategy. A third one that was already mentioned before again as well, there is a significant lack of novelty in strategy and policy design. Maybe there's an institutional risk aversion. Maybe it's the incentive scheme that for managers, it's more about spending the money and applying it in visible things and quick wins than stimulating a transformation that is only visible 10, 15 years afterwards. But we need novel responses. So we need to be creative. We need not to be afraid of burning money, of risking, taking risks in public policy and making mistakes. But we need to be more audacious and more bold in our way of devising the programs and implementing the money. Quadruple helix, which is quite important, but we need to somehow improve the mechanism of transmission between what we learn in entrepreneurial discovery and policy change. Because the feed from entrepreneurial discovery into policy is actually quite feeble in the case of our regions, and my experience across Europe is more or less the same. It's very hard that the recommendations from the entrepreneurial discovery process actually enter the political jargon and are implemented in everyday policy, apart from some pilot actions. And so we need to improve that also to make it more meaningful and can keep on stimulating agents to participate. We also need to avoid intermittence. What I mean by this is something that I feel across Europe. At certain points, in the beginning of the now ending programming cycle of 2014-2020, we were very enthusiastic about smart specialization. We didn't even know exactly what it was, but everybody was going on board and want to do it. Then we are overwhelmed by the natural everyday life. We are overwhelmed by the fact that there's different degrees of implementation across Europe. There's somehow a general lack of, again, commitment. And so we love smart specialization, then it disappears from our radar, then it comes back, then it disappears, then it comes back. And Arnault and the team are trying to do their best, as well as JRC, to keep it alive. But even in European policy, it keeps on disappearing. And this is a problem because it leads to a loss of momentum. And I would say final remark would be that at least in convergence regions like North and in less developed regions as well, like Galicia, there is an umbilical cord between funding and smart specialization. And this should not be like this. Strategy should come first, even then if we then realize that maybe we don't have the money or the means to implement it. And then we need to be more humble and decide what we can do, what we cannot do. But because we are always conditioning strategy to the policy instruments that we have, we are inverting the logic and probably harming the impact. I thank you so much for your attention, and I hope I didn't go too much beyond time.
Thank you, Alexandre. It was very interesting. So you're forgiven. You were over time, but you are forgiven. Thank you for sharing recommendations, challenges that you faced, and the good practices as well. Let's move on to the Basque Country. Let's see what's happening at the sub-regional level and in the implementation of the F3, and then we will have time for questions from the audience. So do not hesitate to use the chat. Marc?
Yeah, I'm just going to say the speakers, there are some questions, or at least one that's addressed to all of you. So have a look. You can all give different answers to Marta, who's asked a question about the legal forms that some of this cooperation takes. I think, Alexandre, your presentation would be particularly relevant if some of these cooperation agreements have a legal form. So don't hesitate to answer directly in the chat, speakers. Thanks, yes. Arnault.
No worries. So, Leire, the floor is yours.
Yes. Hi. I'm trying to share my presentation.
Yes. Screen. Excellent. We can see it, and you have eight minutes.
Perfect. So, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. And well, thanks to the Interreg Europe Learning Platform for giving me this opportunity to share my good practice. Well, I'm Leire Seara from the Leire Foundation, and the good practice I'm going to explain is the implementation of a sub-regional S3 aligned to the regional S3, which is part of, as you have mentioned before, the Cohesion Interreg Europe project, whose leader is BEAS, the public agency for economic promotion of the Provincial Council of Vizcaya. So, well, Leire, our territory, is one of the 7 territories of Vizcaya. It just consists of 12 municipalities and 26,000 inhabitants in total. It's a small territory. It's a small rural area of great tourist attraction, I have to say. And well, the RTI Foundation, the entity I represent, is a center for entrepreneurship and innovation committed to the economic development of the RTI territory. We are the tool for the regional economic development of the 12 town councils that make up the Leire territory. and we closely cooperate as an antenna for Vizcaya Provincial Council to deliver innovation and entrepreneurship support. So our role is to help with the capillarity of the policies, projects, and regional smart specialization strategy in the territory. So the policy instrument that addresses the good practice is the country-level competitiveness strategy of the Department of Economic Promotion of Vizcaya Provincial Council, NAT3. And well, the challenge addressed by this strategy is to achieve a competitive and territorially balanced Vizcaya based on collaboration and a multi-level governance model. So this is the challenge is to improve the implementation of the regional S3 by adding a horizontal territorial-based approach to the vertical cluster-based approach. This demands a further coordination between the vertical sector-based and horizontal territorial levels. So in 2018, the Vizcaya Provincial Council created Vizcaya at Balance. This is an initiative which is very well defined. It has a very well-defined structure. The strategy itself and also the Vizcaya at Balance initiative are defined and promoted by the Vizcaya Provincial Council, which is supported for its development by its provincial public company, VEAS. So the recipients and the players of this strategy are the local economic promotion agents. This means that Vizcaya at Balance network of agencies is currently formed by 24 local agencies and represents 111 municipalities in Vizcaya. And so one of the agencies is Leire Foundation. There are some advisory partners in this initiative, some with a sectoral profile and some others with a generalist and academic profile. So within the framework of this initiative, the provincial S3 was defined, consisting of a serial cross-cutting and sectoral priorities on in line with the regional S3. And well, the regional S3 sets out 3 strategic areas: advanced manufacturing, energy and biosciences, and 4 opportunity territories: food, planification and urban regeneration, ecosystems, and creative industries. Concretely, the opportunity area defined as ecosystems refers to the application of the circular economy in industry. So, well, the good practice I'm going to explain is aligned with both the regional and the provincial S3 strategies. So the good practice takes to design as a regional municipal smart specialization strategy, where the key aspects are the collaboration by means of defining a clear governance model, also by the active participation of all the 4 ELIX agents in its design. Another key is the alignment with the regional S3, and also another key is achieving the capillarity and deployment of the S3 by setting up working groups and services for enterprises and the definition and execution of specific projects with them. So this is our smart specialization strategy, which is focused on 4 priorities: health, healthy food, circular economy, and wellness tourism. For the development of these local S3, as you can see, in all 4 areas, we collaborate with both local and regional actors. In the fields of health and the fields of healthy food, we work with Leire, the technology center expert in polymers and food, located in Leire also. And in addition, Leire Foundation is part of the Basque Health Cluster, and Leire is part of the Basque Food Cluster. In the field of circular economy, we work in close collaboration with the Basque Environmental Cluster, Clima. And in the field of tourism, we work closely with Basquetour, the Basque Tourism Agency. So, well, the process to design the local S3 started in 2006, and well, driven by the awareness of existence of potential overlaps in the activities and the need to improve the impact in the territory, the 4 main actors of the innovation governance system of Leire decided to join forces to foster innovation in the supra-municipal district. So, well, the different innovation agents agreed to design a common strategic plan for local economic development. Then what we did was to define a participatory process for the design of this strategic plan with the aim of involving agents of the fourth LX. After that, we implemented the design process, and so we therefore designed the strategic plan for local economic development. Later, we designed the governance model of the strategic plan, where each actor was responsible for a specific strategic challenge or objective. And after that, we designed this multi-specialization strategy in line with the previously designed strategic plan, as well as the regional S3. And finally, each agent was responsible for the deployment of this strategic plan and the local S3 by integrating these challenges into their own strategic plans. So one of the keys to this process has been the design of a participatory process. And it is also important to emphasize that in this context, Leire Seara Foundation's role is to lead and drive the supra-municipal smart specialization strategy. So in order to improve the deployment of the regional S3 in a cohesive and territorially balanced way, we will make two types of recommendations. One could be addressed to regional provincial authorities, and the other one addressed to local economic development agents. So as far as the regional or provincial authorities are concerned, we will recommend above all to empower the local economic development agents in the deployment of the regional S3 by involving them in the deployment of the regional S3, since they have close contact with SMEs. Also by providing local economic promotion agents with methodologies, on one hand, to design the local S3 aligned to the regional S3, and on the other hand, to design an effective governance model. We'll also recommend them to provide local economic promotion agents with funds for the definition and implementation of the local S3 aligned to the regional S3. We will also recommend to create collaborative spaces for reflection within the initiative to foster the identification and development of synergies and mutual learning among local economic promotion agents, and also by creating an effective system to measure the results of the initiative in terms of at least number of SMEs implementing S3 projects, number and quality of S3 projects developed by each of the local actors. And well, as far as local promotion agents are concerned, I will suggest, well, the previously mentioned keys in the definition of the sub-regional S3, which are, well, it is necessary to define a clear territorial governance model. It is also necessary to design a participatory process for the design of the S3. It is also important that all agents duly embrace the common projects by integrating the S3 into their own plans. It is also important that they design and offer value-added services and create working groups with businesses to help in the realization of the S3. It is also important to appoint a leader to promote the sub-regional S3, and it is essential to participate in working groups outside the sub-provincial area to mainly connect the local S3 with other working groups. So, thank you.
Thank you.
For your attention.
Thank you very much, Leire. Very interesting, good practice how to better implement S3 at the sub-regional level. So thank you very much for that. So let's move on to Annamaria. I think, Leire, you can stop sharing the screen, and Annamaria, you have 5 minutes to reflect on the good practices, but also the keynote speakers as well. And then we open the floor to questions from the audience.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I work as economist for ARTI, Regional Agency for Technology and Innovation of ARTI Puglia. We, as agency, we are involved in 2 Interreg Europe projects, and also we support the regional government for the preparation, implementation and monitoring of the smart specialization strategy. Well, there have been a lot of insightful recommendations this afternoon. I particularly appreciated the concept of time consistency and the risk aversion, because, okay, I was an economic experimentalist in my previous life, but well, there are two aspects that I want to stress in this my time for discussion today. One is the territorial aspect, and the other one, strictly interrelated, is the governance. Well, we should remember that smart specialization strategy, by definition, is a place-based innovation policy concept, but very often the territorial aspect has been neglected in the regional smart specialization strategy. So I found of relevance the two good practices presented today, because on the one hand, Alexandre spoke about the experience, the relevant experience of a collaboration among cross-border regions, one in Spain and one in Portugal. And on the other hand, Leire spoke about the sub-regional elements to be integrated into regional Basque Country smart specialization strategy. But at the same time, both of them ask them how to involve agents at these different levels in this smart specialization strategy. So it's important to consider territorial aspects and the governance, how to better coordinate or with new ways to collaborate. So really great experience presented. It should seem that this approach contradicts each other. Cross-border regions collaboration on the one hand, and the other hand, sub-regional elements. But I think it's important that each region must find the approach that best fits its own knowledge, analysis and policy needs, and also considering its geography, its history, its economy. So all the approach are good if they are responsive to specific needs. Okay, finally, let's consider our region, Puglia. In the process, in the entrepreneurial discovery process that we made for the preparation of the new smart specialization strategy, it has made clear of local issue in a given innovation chain are directly and closely related to global and extra-regional dynamics. We are aware about that. And this resembles something that Elisabetta showed in his picture, global challenges and their impact on the local events. And as regards, so it's clear then in the preparation, implementation, smart specialization strategy, you should think about global, national level, extra-regional, cross-border, subnational, all levels are important. And also are important the governance aspect. In our case, the governance system for our smart specialization strategy foresees two levels. The one is more strategic and political, and the second one is more operational. We are creating an observatory that will ensure the connection of smart specialization strategy with the territory for a continuous entrepreneurial discovery process. But I will be honest, I think that more should be made for consider territorial aspect. For example, to best of my knowledge, no regions in Italy consider the synergies between regions for this smart specialization strategy. And I think that no one, absolutely no one in the cross-border regions between Italy and, for example, France, but also in our smart specialization strategy should stress more the sub-regional elements as Leire presents. So I think that thanks to Alexandre and Leire for a lot of these insights for also to learn in our case.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Annamaria, for those reflections. Maybe Marc, you have some good questions.
Yeah. Again, thanks to both of those good practices. I'll start in the reverse order. Let's go to the Basque Country, Leire. The use of clusters is as an intermediary, as a way of, let's say, ensuring the business perspective is taken on board was very clear from your presentation. I wonder to what extent the clusters are able to work at different levels. Thinking of how different intermediaries, everybody has a sort of geographical membership or political boundary that will occupy them. How do clusters interact with you at that provincial level, or the as opposed to the Basque Country level? Are they comfortable with the different levels?
Well, at the provincial level, at the Biscayat Balance Initiative, they take part in the working groups. The Biscaya Provincial Council sets up where we share experiences. They try to boost the mutual learning, and is where we set our projects and try to enrich them. Anyway. We closely collaborate with them because when we design any kind of project with companies, we always try to involve them. So our collaboration is really close with them. We try not to let them aside when we design a concrete project, which is which has a very sectoral focus. So.
Okay, so they're sat around the table with you, designing your programs for supporting businesses. Okay, understanding. Thank you, Leire. Alexandre, question for you. I mean, this cross-border situation is very interesting for many regions, and it's at the heart of the S3 partnerships that a number of you are involved with a thematic focus, agriculture, energy, sports, etc. I was wondering whether in your operational program in Norte and in the Galicia operational program, are there any funding instruments that are encouraging cross-border partnerships? I mean, do the two regions say we will allocate 1 million for this particular priority, let's call it green transition, but to get the money you have to have a partner from the neighboring region? Has the operational program and the funding instruments tried to strengthen, let's say, the carrot incentive part of cooperation?
No, I would say that we use mainly two instruments. One are national budgets, in the case of Galicia, regional budget, in the case of North region, national budget, because we don't have full administrative regions in Portugal. And we use national budget, so that common investment plan that is drafted between the two regions partially is funded by the national budgets. Another part is funded through the Interreg. What we have done was try to redirect the Portugal-Spain cooperation program towards the delivery of smart specialization or the priorities of North Galicia. So the amount of money that was allocated to Northern Galicia in the priorities of the axis 1 and 3, I think, which are the ones related to company innovation or research and development, they were targeting the areas of smart specialization. And that is it. The regional operational programs, especially in North, which is quite significant, is pretty much aligned with the regional smart specialization strategy.
Yeah.
And that's the only criteria that there is. But North region could explain it to you better. Now I'm national, so it's out of my league.
Yeah, no, but I think you highlight in your response the complexities between the the funding powers of partners. The Spanish regions have different funding and legislative powers than the French ones or the Portuguese one. But I think it's a pity is not the word, but I think in regions and operational programs, we are challenged, all of us, by the dynamic flexibility, responsiveness we expect from S3s, and the operational programs that tend to not change a great deal during their funding period. And I think that's one of the issues that we still need to resolve if we're going to get some good alignment.
Yes, thank you, Marc. I think, unfortunately, we have to move on to working groups. So again, I would like to thank Alexandre, Leire, and Annamaria for being here, for being the great guest speaker. So it was great having you. So now we're moving into working groups. So 2 different working groups. One will be moderated by me and one by Marc, and we will discuss what are you doing in your region for 40 minutes, and then coming back for concluding remarks, 5 minutes at the end. So see you in the working groups. Welcome back, everyone. I see Marc is here. You went up.
Put my flock back with me, hopefully.
Excellent. Yes, I could see people coming back here. So short insight. Maybe Marc, you can give us like your insight on this online workshop, and then I will go through these 4 points. But you have 2 minutes to give us like.
Yeah, okay. I think there were sort of 3 messages that I can share. So firstly, thanks to the group because they were very, very active and reactive. The one in terms of animating the implementation process, we heard some interesting experience of working groups, whether they're sector-based or technology-based. In terms of their efficiency, they need a recognized animator, can be a head of a sector group, can be a cluster manager, can be somebody who will draw in other people, need to be supported by a relevant innovation agency, foundation or regional authority person. So we need that sort of partnering to create that sort of ongoing dynamic. We need to give businesses something that they can't get from the simple bottom-up approach, the top-down knowledge, the foresight, the horizon, the perspective for a particular sector. What can businesses get from the implementation process? It was also highlighted, and particular, like the expression from Ninetta saying, if we keep telling businesses there are challenges and don't tell them what the business opportunities, then we will lose them in the implementation process. Second one is we talked a bit about the S3 partnerships, giving us another perspective on implementation. Some regions have funding that can be used for cross-border funding. National funding can work, regional funding can work. Some operational program funding works like that. So using the S3 partnerships as another means for developing your implementation, but also project partner building for the future, because I think a number of the partners joined us to see how the next Interreg Europe program can help them consolidate on their lessons. And last but not least, we had some examples of S3 strategies that really are driving the new agenda for a region, for an island for the next 20, 30 years. So having that long-term perspective, as opposed to others that are aligned with the operational program. So S3, you know, is different implementation routes clearly visible. Voila.
Excellent. Thank you, Marc, for those three insights. From my side, 4 different points. So first, we are going to write a nice follow-up online article with the main insights of the workshop. Do not hesitate to send us a recommendation of what you would like to discuss in future events. I mean, we spoke about many topics, from clusters to telehealth to telemedicine co-working spaces. So we can do online discussions or events that match your interest. We also have a survey, so please fill up the survey. Tell us what you think. Did you think that Marc and I did a good job moderating this event? We hope so. So please tell us what you think. And tomorrow, big day also, and it's going to be on the low carbon economy day. So very interesting. And they're going to speak mostly about energy transitions and energy. So if you're interested in that, you can join us tomorrow. So I would like to thank everyone, of course, our speakers, everyone, the participants, for being here in the working group. So you're the brave enough to stay until the end. So congrats to you, and thank you for being here. And for the one who wanted to have a talk with us, please stay a few more minutes, and we will talk with you in the policy help desk. But thank you from my side, and see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks from me as well. Thanks for sharing your time.